Hi, I'm Johnny Heller, and you're listening to The Audio Flow with Jacques. And why shouldn't you be? Audiobooks never sounded so good. The Audio Flow with Jacques.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us for this week's episode of The Audio Flow. I'm your host, Jacques, and I'm super excited about today's guest. I had never really heard of Lit RPG, and he is one person that has done so many of those. And in case you don't know what that is, don't worry, you'll find out from today's guest. Please help me welcome Jeff Hayes, founder and owner of Soundbooth Theater. Hey, welcome to the Audio Flow, Jeff. How's it going?
It's going great, actually. Just got back from Thailand a few days ago. I'm still acclimating to back in the U.S., being back here at home where people actually understand what I'm saying.
Well, how long were you out there?
2.5 weeks.
And were you working or was it a pleasure trip?
It wasn't work. It was pleasurable, but it was more of like investigating my heritage type of trip.
Ancestry.com trip?
So, sort of. Well, actually, my mom's half of the family lives there, but until now, I haven't really had an opportunity to go and meet them. And I turned 31 while I was out there, so it's been a long time coming. I feel kind of bad for not having gone earlier in my life, but it was great. It was great to meet that side of the family, and I mean, despite our communication issues, you know, my mom and my aunt speak good English, so we were able to communicate at least on that level back and forth.
Well, that's got to be fun. You know, part of your work is communicating and narrating, and unfortunately, you couldn't use any of those skills out there in Thailand. But it sounds like a good trip. Happy belated birthday to you.
Thank you.
31. I remember 31 10 years ago, but yeah, so just enjoy the 30s while you can.
I will do just that. They're turning out great already, so.
Well, that's good. That's good. Well, I am so excited to have you on the show. We actually got a chance to connect with you through Jess, who works with audio bookworm. So I'm glad that we were able to get this in. And let me just say that I have gone through and checked out your Audible library and things like that. But I always like to know from persons that come on the show if you ever had a background in theater or anything like that, because I know just from chatting with people that some people kind of fall into narrating audiobooks and some people actually chose it after they had a career in either film or television or theater. So what was kind of that thing that got you into this part of the industry?
Well, first of all, I have very, very little formal training in acting. I did some acting in high school, and that's about it. Way back then. When I was really little, I had aspirations to be an actor, but then I found music and I totally forgot about it. So when I was a teenager, I picked up a bass guitar. I played a lot of music. I did a lot of composing, but I was never really great at the fundamentals. And I don't know. I just kind of flew by the seat of my pants and learned as much as I could and did a lot of exploring and experimenting and such. But I never really got into a space where I could make any real money off music. But everything that I've learned from music has helped inform my current career path, which is audiobooks. I've been doing audiobooks for 5 years now. I started with voiceover on voices.com, just doing random stuff here and there, commercials, you know, voiceovers for like art installations and stuff like that. But it was a pain in the ass doing those kinds of jobs because just constantly auditioning, maybe getting one job out of 200 auditions, and I was barely making enough to get by. And then one day I got an audiobook job. I mean, probably 6 months into doing voiceover, I got an audiobook job that paid pretty damn well. And not only that, but it was so much more fun than auditioning for all these different things that I wasn't enjoying anyway. You know, commercials are not they're not fun for me. I found just with that first audiobook that it was, I mean, I felt like I had so much creative control. You know, I was telling a story. I felt like I was kind of a director of a film or a play. You know, I cast everybody. You know, I played every role. So it allowed me to do what I think is most fun about voiceover, which is exercise my range. You know, like the beauty of voiceover is no one can see you, right? It's just the voice. So you can use that to your advantage and play whatever character you want convincingly if you put the effort in. You know, if you don't you don't have anyone looking at you going, "Hey, you're not a girl," right?
Exactly.
So I was just like, okay, well, I guess I'll just figure out how to voice anybody. And no, I wasn't perfect when I first started out. I would even say that I wasn't very good, but keep going and keep pushing and keep those standards high and you get there.
Yeah. And so I want to go back a little bit because you mentioned a little bit about your musical background and how that has played its role in where you are now. So now, were you a vocalist, or what instruments do you, or I'm assuming you still play. So what was your instrument?
I was bass guitar.
Bass guitar.
Yeah, and I actually, when I was in high school, my first band, we were a trio, and so I also sang and played. But I always thought of I mean, it was never because I was a good singer. It was because, well, I have the least bad voice out of the three of us.
That's
Uh,
funny. The least bad, which means you weren't the worst, but you weren't the
yeah,
the best
I,
either.
we had to make a do with me. That was how it went back then. So, but you know, I wasn't terrible. I just didn't really have great intonation or chops. So anyway, that's how I started, and I was like, after that band, I just wanted to do all instrumental. I didn't want to have any vocals in my music at all because I'm very much about the composition, very much about the music itself, and I've almost always felt like vocals sometimes take away from music. You know, it puts so much emphasis on that one instrument that it distracts from the piece as a whole. Uh, so I ended up composing a lot of more instrumental stuff. My next band, which it was called Fiat, Fiat, kind of like the car. It's not. I actually had no idea that a car existed, that a car company existed called Fiat back then. It's actually the story behind the name is inconsequential, but it was more of like a jazz fusion type of band. Very very explorative and lots of fun chord progressions and difficult passages and stuff. I was really into pushing myself in music as well. So that's what I did. And naturally, because it was that sort of genre, no one wanted to listen to it. So, uh,
That's not true. It sounds really good. So, have you ever, in any of the audiobooks that you've done, has there ever called for any type of uh music? I know some books don't add music, but some, there's a rock singer or something, and normally people don't sing the parts of the words. They usually just kind of speak them. But have you ever done any books that required or had that opportunity for you to test out those vocal cords?
okay, so first of all, when I first started doing audiobooks, one of my most popular series, like the first actually popular series that I produced, it's called the Divine series by M.R. Forbes.
Hmm.
The first book is called Balance, and I actually actually composed a new piece of music for every single book in that series, just like an intro, like you would, like you're watching a TV show and there's the beginning credits, right? And there's a music.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I actually wrote a piece for the first book, and I was like, this was really fun, and I just kept messing with that theme and creating new ones for each one, and that was just a thing I did for fun. Nowadays, I don't have time really to do that, but it was a way for me to exercise and add a little bit more to the product, start a mood before the person starts listening.
Yeah.
And then but since then, there's just a couple books that I can think of that actually have singing involved. There's The Eaten by John K. Addis. It's a horror book by John K. Addis. It's about this abandoned underground hotel. It's kind of a haunted house type of story with a twist. But there's one part where there's music playing from a cell phone, and I thought it'd be really creepy to actually sing it and try and make it sound like the actual singer who sang the song. So I did that for that, and then very recently there's a book called Dungeon Lord that's coming out probably in another week by Hugo Huesca, and there's this little part where the main character is going through this sort of weird surgery transition, like he just had his heart replaced in this crazy H.P. Lovecraft type world, and he's like seeing visions and stuff, and he hears this chorus of he's not sure, like monsters or demons singing this song about the Dungeon Lord. And so I actually did like 3 layers of little gremlin type singers. Yeah. So I did that, but that's all I've done so far. However, this year I'm planning on doing a book with an author that I work with a lot named Harmon Cooper.
Mm-hmm.
He's actually writing a piece, a series that's designed specifically for me and another narrator named Annie Ellicott. Well, she's not really a narrator yet. She's just started voice acting. I've been listening to her. She's a jazz singer. I've been listening to her for like a decade, and I'm like a huge fan. And finally, I was like, one day I'm going to invite her over and see if she can do some voice work. And she's an absolute natural at it. So we're actually making a series that's going to have a lot of music intertwined into the audiobook of me and Annie singing and playing our respective instruments. She plays a ukulele. I'm going to be getting a new acoustic bass guitar for it. So it's actually going to be a really interesting production that goes a step further and isn't just narration, that you will have that musical element as well.
And you see how you brought that all the way back full circle from, I don't want to sing. I'm not going to sing. I'm just going to compile this music. It's going to be all instrumental, to doing a project where you're singing and playing.
Yeah. And the thing is, I never really had the confidence to sing and be like, okay, this is the product. I'm happy with this, until I've done so much voice work just narrating, because now my voice is so much more flexible,
right?
And I have so much more range and I have more control. So it's only going to take probably a good month of like practicing legit singing for me to be in the kind of shape that I need to be to actually make a good product.
Well, that sounds fun. It sounds like something that I would listen to, and maybe you will you will play a couple of items from Fiat for me next time when you come back on the show, because
maybe I will.
Maybe you will. See, just threw that out there so you can remember when you come back on the show. But so I, of course, like I said, I was going through your Audible library, and I see that you've kind of gone through just about every genre of books that you've had a chance to put your voice on, with sci-fi and fantasy being kind of, at the tippy top. So
Yep.
on a personal level, are you an avid reader or audiobook listener?
No,
Neither?
actually, no, neither one. So when I first started listening to audiobooks, I was working for my mom. She she and my dad used to own a bunch of rental property, so I was their maintenance guy, and so there's a lot of work to do that required no brain, no ears, just manual labor, painting white walls white, and such as that. So I needed things to distract my mind, and podcasts were doing it for a while, and then I found Audible and audiobooks, and I started trying to get into them. But the only stuff I could really get into was the nonfiction. I didn't like the fiction stuff because I just couldn't get into it. I didn't feel like the narrators were ever that into it, so they just kind of lost me. I would lose track of the story within 30 seconds or so, and it would just be noise to me. Nonfiction, I'm learning something, so they've already got my attention, right? With fiction, it's all nonsense, right? Until it's entertainment,
Right.
right? You got to entertain me, or I'm not going to listen. Sorry. So that's kind of informed my actual production philosophy. I want the audiobook to be a show because I'm working in fiction. I'm working in science fiction and fantasy, which are like kind of the most extreme type of colorful genres that you can be in. So you gotta have that glamour, right? You gotta make a big thing out of it, or else it kind of gets lost. At least for me as a listener, as a person who's used to always being like an absolute music snob, and like I have to have only the best stuff in my ears at all times. So just coming from that perspective as a listener, that's what I figured I'm going to make audiobooks that I would actually listen to.
hmm And so you were able to listen to a couple of these audiobooks. And so, again, so sci-fi seems to be at the top of the list. And you used to listen to a lot of nonfiction. So do you,
When I get the time,
when
when
you
I
get
get
the
the
time? Now, yeah, that's the other interesting thing is that I talked to a lot of people in this industry, and it's, you know, it seems like you don't really have that leisure time to go and sit down and say, I'm going to read a book today, or I'm just going to listen to an audiobook because that's what you do for a living. So it doesn't,
exactly.
it
That's the last
doesn't,
thing I want to do when I'm not
exactly,
working.
it's not funny. I mean, it is. It's like somebody who works at a call center and they talk to people all day. When they get
Yeah,
home, they delete the last thing they want to do is pick up the phone and talk to somebody. And
yeah.
so it kind of loses its thing. But so I guess when you were, if you had to say you had something that you enjoyed, that was fiction. And I can say, this would go for television as well. Are you into sci-fi, fantasy? Um, I
Um,
guess.
I, I would even say that sci-fi and fantasy, they don't draw me in particular.
Okay.
Um, I like my favorite type of fiction is stuff that um, really gets at the human condition. For me, it's more about the themes.
hmm
It's more about the underlying message, and so a lot of the time, sci-fi, and fantasy makes it all about the plot and the setting and the magic, and I think that stuff's it's fun, it's entertaining, but it doesn't touch me deeply in the way that a lot of fiction can. That doesn't have all that stuff. Like I really like noir,
hmm
like detective stuff.
Yeah.
I like talky stuff. I like dialogue. I like personal interactions and stuff. So if there's a good blend of that with the action, then I'm totally on board.
Right.
But I think sci-fi and fantasy often dump that stuff for spectacle.
Yeah,
And
I guess it also depends on the writer and the writing style. But why I mentioned it because you've done so much, and I would say that obviously you must be good at it, and you bring a certain tone to the characters, and you're able to portray them very well because that's the bulk of the the books that I see you've narrated, and I just wonder what helps you get into the zone for those characters and those type of books, since it's technically not your leisurely favorite genre. What do you do to kind of pump yourself up to get into those characters?
I think that the main thing is just doing my best to get lost in the story as I'm reading it for the first time. When I'm reading a book, when I'm reading a piece of fiction, the most important thing in my mind is, what does this person sound like? Because I'm a very visual and oral reader. Like I picture and hear the things that are happening while I'm reading vividly, and I think that's part of what informs the characters when I'm voicing them is that picture that I have in my head. I see the scenery, and so that's kind of what helps me get into their head, and deliver their lines appropriately in the scene. And I think that desire for the more personal connections in my fiction is what makes me good at reading the characters in the first place, like understanding where they're coming from, so I can actually show that.
Right.
So, like, despite the fact that sci-fi and fantasy as fiction don't particularly draw me, that doesn't mean I don't get what makes them interesting to most people. Like that entertainment value, that excitement, like I get it. And I have a good feel for how to bring that out in just voice. It's kind of, I don't really know how to explain that. It's about music, really. It's about rhythm, pacing, melody, and I think that's what's informing that stuff too, is just my experience with music, what I know about what music does to elicit a certain reaction from me as a listener. So yeah, I don't know. Did I answer your question there?
You did answer my question. That's so funny. I'll ask a question and people will answer, and they're like, I don't know if I answered the question. I think you, you did answer the question. And so I see that the latest book that you had that released was, according to Audible, was Hellions.
Yes.
And it's on the 15th. So it just released 2 days ago. So happy release day to you and
Thank
to
you.
Jeff. Is his last name Sproul?
Yeah, I think he prefers Sproul, but everyone pronounces it Sproul.
We of course, so like you and I were having this discussion about name misnomers and mispronunciations and spellings, and of course I spelled Jeff's name with an E, Hayes. And I don't know why we even do that, because the word hay doesn't have an E on it, and I don't need Hayes.
It's the most common spelling of that last name. That's the thing. Probably 90% of Hayes are spelled Hayes, so it's a totally understandable mistake.
Well, I totally get it, because my name technically is pronounced Jacqueline, but nobody ever says Jacqueline, and nobody ever calls me Jacqueline either. They call me Jacqueline, and there's no A in my name anywhere. And so I totally get it. So Jeff, say his last name again.
Sproul. No, wait, no, that's the one that everyone says. Sproul. Sproul.
Well, Jeff Sproul, I apologize for I will never mispronounce it again. Jeff Sproul. I got it. Release Hellions, which is the thing about the sci-fi books and stuff, they use these names. They create these names, and then I'm sitting there trying to figure out how to say it. So I don't know if it's the sigil online or
it's sigil.
Sigil. I would have figured it out in 3 guesses later. The Sigil Online Book 2. So that just came out. So did you also do book 1 in that series?
I did.
Okay.
I did. Book 1 is called Sigil Online Paragons.
Okay.
And that was, let's see, this is one of my first audiobooks in the lit RPG genre. And this is, I don't know if you've heard of lit RPG yet. I don't know if your listeners have heard of lit RPG yet, but it's this relatively new genre. It's really a subgenre of sci-fi and fantasy
Yeah.
that's based mainly in a video game.
Mhm.
So the actual characters, there's like this meta layering going on where you have the character and they're actually just a regular person in a futuristic world, and then they jump into a VR game, right? They put on a VR headset and they're all of a sudden in a different world. What's charming about this genre is it's speaking to people of my generation, the generation right before me, and the new generations that are coming up who have integrated video games into their lives so much and are so used to seeing the world and thinking of the world in video game terms. It speaks to that part of our minds, and I think that's why people are so interested in it. Also, why people are so kind of perplexed by the emergence of this genre. Like people who haven't read lit RPG, they don't get it. They're like, this sounds kind of like watching someone play a video game.
Yeah.
Uh,
And the funny part about that is I just found out really what role play games are. And most people, I'm a little older than you, but not by much, will always go back to Dungeons and Dragons
yep,
and Warcraft. And so
yep.
they will always, it doesn't matter what you're talking about. When they think of role play, they're thinking of Dungeons and Dragons, and I didn't realize probably in the last 2 years that it became that it's larger than I expected. That there's these different cons that people go to, and for me back in the day, it was about the Trekkie conventions, and people were dressing up in their favorite Star Trek or whatever. And then it went over to cosplay. I had no idea any of that stuff existed until really last year, and I met up with I bought my first role play game. So,
Oh, really? What was it?
see, now I can't even remember. It was a new company that came out. I went to an event in Kentucky, and I bought a book, and it had to do, of course, with some type of zombies or something. And they was like, "Well, you can't be." They told me that I couldn't be the see, now I don't even remember the person that tells everybody what to do. Don't
Oh, the DM, the DM.
yeah, him,
Yeah.
that person. That's like, well, you have to kind of learn how to do that. And so then there I go. I'm like, oh, I'm that kid that's picked last for volleyball again because I have no idea. I have no idea what's going on, but but I got so much out of it, and I don't want to veer too much, but there's a lot that goes into that team building, because they told me that it wasn't just about me trying to survive myself. It was about all of us trying to survive and what we can do as a team. And I've never really thought of it like that. And then my mind goes back to Dungeons and Dragons. And so I think this would be a good book to listen to really get my mind more acclimated to how those role playing games work. But I'm kind of
Yeah, this
old, so putting on those virtual reality goggles and all that stuff just kind of creeps me out.
yeah, I've actually been kind of getting addicted to. I just bought a VR rig for a PlayStation. I actually didn't even have a PlayStation 4, so I bought the PlayStation 4 and the whole VR rig so I could play one of my favorite games that's
Mhm.
been converted into VR, and it's incredible because you really feel like you're there. You really feel like you're in those locations. And I've played the game. It's called Skyrim. I've played the game countless hours
Mhm.
and before VR. So playing it in VR, actually feeling like it's all there around you and looking at the mountains and looking around at this world, it's absolutely surreal. I'm like I said, I'm getting re-addicted to the game at the moment, and just diving in, and it's funny because it's so relevant to my job now.
Yeah.
Because actually in 2017 I did over 20 lit RPG books.
Wow. That's a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah, it's a lot, but it's a budding genre. It's really growing quickly. People are the people who listen to or read lit RPG are ravenous. They just can't get enough. Um, so that's why I'm so glad that I jumped on early. Um, but Sigil Online, the series, the that book two just came out. It's actually based in a superhero type world. So anyone listening who's familiar with massively multiplayer online role playing games, it would be kind of like playing City of Heroes in VR. So like but it's funny you mentioned team building as an aspect of role playing games, and I think that team like playing as a team is something that most players aren't good at, and that's part of what makes playing video games online so frustrating. Is everyone's just out for themselves, but there are players who are experienced who know how to play in a team, and that makes games so much more fun and so much more interesting to actually interact with people and have a plan and stuff. And I think that this Sigil Online series is kind of uh, team finding your team is sort of one of the themes of this series. It's all about the main character trying to figure out who he should be playing with and how he should behave as a team member, as a social player. So that's one thing that draws me to this series is just the human nature of it and the way that it reflects a lot of how people game nowadays and how people think about strategy and stuff in video games nowadays. So that that's kind of a common thing with a lot of the lit RPGs is just kind of commenting on how people interact with that extra layer of non-reality in front of them. Um, so yeah, I'm really excited about the second book coming out. It's a big ramp up. Like the first one was action packed. The second one is even more so. Anyone who enjoyed the first one will definitely like the second one. But it's available now, and yeah, I've got a lot of other stuff coming up though.
Yeah, you do have a lot of stuff coming up. So let's talk about it. So we are, I can't believe we're almost out of the month of January. So 2018 is already making its impact and pushing along here. And next thing
Yep.
you know, we'll be saying Happy New Year all over again. But
Yeah.
so let's talk a little bit about kind of what's coming up for you so we can be on the lookout for your latest releases. And then also, you and I talked a little bit offline about one of your most popular, highly rated audiobooks, which to me, everybody has the best title ever with over 1,338 ratings. It released in October of 2017, which is just fantastic to have that many reviews so quickly. So I'm gonna let you tell everybody the title.
The title of that one is Morningwood. Everybody loves large chests.
And I can't help but laugh every time you say it.
Yeah, it's definitely a comedy. And you were speaking about the number of ratings in such a short amount of time. Actually, the for the first whole month it was out, probably let's see, November, no, a little bit more than that, a little bit more than a month. It was on the comedy bestseller list.
That is awesome.
It was like in the top 10.
Congratulations.
Thank
Yay.
you. So that one's doing phenomenally well. I'm actually starting on book two next Monday.
Okay.
Um,
And the author, everyone, is Nevin Iliev.
yes, Nevin Iliev. He's a really good guy. He's from Bulgaria, and actually, this book uh, has been available on a website called Royal Road Legends for free for a long time. It's actually this really long serial. He's probably written, I don't know, upwards of 600,000 words already of this entire serial. And this is just the first book. He just published it in October, and he didn't even want to publish at first he kind of had to get talked into it,
Mm-hmm.
but it turned out to be a really good idea because this thing took off. So yeah, basically this is another lit RPG, but it kind of turns the genre on its head. In my opinion, it's like a lampoon of lit RPG. Uh, and I kind of don't want to, like, the entire concept. The entire concept is a surprise. One thing that the author said is the entire book is clickbait. Um, like it has a deceptive title. You think it's just going to be this porno, but it's really not. It's really this silly lit RPG romp, and it features just an absolutely amoral main character, um, who I just don't want to spoil who it is.
Don't spoil it. Shh.
I
I will just
won't
tell you
spoil it.
guys. I will tell you. Look, everybody, go to Audible and just look at it, because when you think of Morningwood, you're like, it's not a bad thing, because
No, it's not.
we're all a fan. Well, not we're all. I'm a fan, and I have no problem with it. And then was that too much? Did I go too far? It's my show. I
No,
can say whatever I want.
you can say whatever.
And
Yeah.
and you see the cover, and there's.
I love this cover, by the way.
I love the cover too, because you've kind of got. She kind of looks like she's very chesty.
Mm-hmm.
She's sitting on a chest, and
yes, she is.
she just kind of looks like, when you watch those video games, and the girl is really curvy, and she's
Yep.
got blonde hair, and it kind of looks like, I don't know, like she's Swedish, or I don't know, something. and you're just like, oh yeah, she's hot, and you're like, oh, is it porny? Is it a porn comedy? Is it a parody? What is it? And then it just makes you want to buy it. So you should go buy it, and see
You
why
should.
it's got all these great reviews. And I'm sure that Jeff did some great things with the narration. Now, in these particular books, about how many character voices, are you dealing with, especially
Well,
these type?
again, lit RPG is basically a subgenre of sci-fi and fantasy. And in sci-fi and fantasy, one of the great things about those genres is that they're so epic in scope most of the time, and so they have just these giant casts of very diverse characters, right? Like just characters from every background, every type of character you can think of, every species of character you can think of, and this book is no different. There's the main character who, again, I don't want to spoil.
Yeah, don't.
And then there's like a succubus demon. There's a fiend demon, and they're both like very different types of demons, so they have different attitudes. There's dwarves and elves, and like all the stereotypical type of characters you would see in a fantasy setting. And there's even a phone call in the book that I narrated, and it's actually one of my favorite scenes in the entire book.
Is the phone call?
Yeah, the phone call.
That's
But
awesome.
yeah. So there's a ton, like in lit RPG, there's always a ton of different fun characters to do. Monsters are my favorite. Like getting out of the human realm and trying to sound scary and big and menacing. I love those types of characters. I love playing villains and stuff. But monsters, and then with monsters, I like to play with special effects, and like make them sound even bigger. Use reverbs and delays and pitch shifters and stuff to make them sound monstrous and otherworldly. So that's one thing that I do that a lot of most narrators don't do, most production companies don't do, and for a good reason. It's not easy, right? It takes time. It takes time, and with especially at the higher levels of production for audiobooks, the margins are tight. Like they have to keep costs down. But my company, Soundbooth Theater, is very small, so we have very little overhead, and so I use that to my advantage just to make my products more interesting, more engaging, and that also just makes it more fun for me, you know.
And I think that works really well in this particular genre and subgenre because, if it were, a romance or something like that, it's like, yeah, we don't need the sound effects. We just want
Right,
we want them to hook up and do the nasty. That's what
right.
I mean. And what we want a story too. We don't it's not we don't I mean, some people listen to audio porn, but you know what I mean. But for
I know.
these for these it really works. The sound effects really works, especially when you mentioned that it is lit RPG because we are used to those type of sound effects and voices and things. If you're playing the video game, those
Absolutely.
are the same things that they use. So it just makes sense that it carries over into the audio, and I think that's what possibly increases the ratings and the listenerability
Hmm.
in those books is because they feel like they're getting a piece of a game in a story. So
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
I'm excited about it. I've I added it to my wish list so I can listen to it and then I can follow up with you later and say, I never saw that coming and it was so fun and so funny. So it would be really cool if we can get one of the authors that you're either working on a serial or series with to come back on the show with us so that we can kind of, have them on and chat with maybe we'll do something live with a couple of um, listeners and readers. So,
That'd be great.
but I am gonna have you come back and you and I will touch bases and see which one of the authors wants to kind of dive into the podcast and also maybe around a release date we can have them chat in and talk to some lit RPG players. That will be fun.
That'd be great. I mean, almost all the lit RPG authors are very accessible, very fun people to talk to. So I think that's very possible. Um, and I think that's another reason why the genre is so successful is because the authors are very much a part of the community. They're very engaged and they're very interested in each other's work and they're very interested in talking to the fans and the readers. Um, and so having that kind of accessibility, especially in this internet age, is very important for any market that has anything to do with entertainment. And because because this genre kind of spawned from the internet. Um, from internet culture, video game culture, and stuff, it's just natural that it would be the kind of genre that has an edge in that way.
Right. Well, so we know what you've done recently. And since I know that you've got a lot of things coming down the pike here, you want to give us a little bit of information about what you're working on and what we can look forward to possibly over the next few weeks or months, maybe through spring.
Sure thing. Okay, so first of all, yesterday another book came out called A Witch's Concern. It's book 4 of the Witch's Path series, which I did the first 3 books of that series 2 years ago. And the thing about that series is I narrated most of it as a female.
Oh,
Yeah. So that was interesting. I remember when I got that job, I didn't expect to get the female part as well. I expected that we were going to do like a dual narration thing and I'd be narrating alongside a female. But I mean, at the time when I did the audition, just for fun, I just did both parts and sent them in.
mhm.
And she was like, "You were better than any of the other females that
Go
auditioned, so
you.
I just want you to do the whole thing." I was like, "Okay." And back then, I was just starting to get in my opinion, okay at female voices. So
Mhm.
this series really helped me get better at doing female voices. Now my female voices are practically indistinguishable. People just they can't tell unless you tell them, hey, this is actually just one guy. Um, so now when I listen back to those, I'm like, not good enough, right? So and another thing is it's not fun to narrate an entire book as a female.
I
It's
can
it's
imagine.
it's painful. It's painful on the voice. It's a little psychologically disturbing. So I actually have been setting my business up to start producing other narrators for audiobooks. And for book 4, which we just finished producing, it just released yesterday on Audible, which is Concern, by N.E. Connolly. Her last name is spelled Conneely. It's a strange spelling that people aren't used to. But we had Lori Catherine Winkle narrate as Michelle Oakes, who's the main character of the story. And the story is about a witch who's she's a consultant for the Georgia police departments. She's a magic consultant. So anytime there's like a magic catastrophe that the police officers in that district don't know how to deal with, they call her in. And it's just a really fun, light, cozy mystery type of book. And I really enjoyed the story, and I wanted to stick with the author. So that's why I called up Lori. I was like, "Hey, you know what? You've got a good voice for this. You've got some attitude. You know, I want you on this book." And she said yes, and it's been great. I mean, it was difficult doing the production, getting everything organized, getting a workflow done so that we have 2 different sources of voices coming in and editing it all together. But I did all the male voices, she did all the female voices, and it's all spliced in. It's not like the male reads one chapter and does all the voices for both, and then the female reads a chapter and does all the voices.
It's strictly duet narration. And,
yeah.
And the good part is that you had somebody that was in the same area, because I know that duet narration can be very difficult. You know, if the both narrators aren't in the same location.
No, no. She did it from Georgia. It's funny. She actually lives in Georgia, and the book is set in Georgia. But
that's good.
Yeah. But the narrator, she did it in her own closet, and we did all the production over here.
It's
her booth.
Not
Sorry.
No.
Sorry. When I was in a closet, I called it a closet. It is what it is. I'm not gonna try and. And you know what? I paid for my booth. So if you wanna call it a booth, you better buy a damn booth and earn it.
It's okay. Sometimes I go and record in my closet too. It's called the bathroom, though. No, I'm just kidding. The bathroom sounds are awful. Nobody should ever record in their bathroom.
Oh no, I remember hearing someone give that advice once.
To record in the bathroom?
Yeah, and I was like, what?
Unless there's like padding across everything in there, and there's no tub. And no, you just can't. It's the worst echo. It's awful. Don't do it.
Terrible.
Never. Don't. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. I digress.
Right. So yeah, A Witch's Concern is out, and we recently released maybe a few months ago the box set of the first 3 books in the series. So you can get the first 4 books in the series for 2 credits right now. So yeah, just look up N.E. Connolly, look up A Witch's Path. That's the name of the series.
Yep.
So look those up, you'll be able to find them. So that just came out yesterday. I'm also producing 2 more books for another narrator named Justin Thomas James. He's a new guy who's super good. He's unbelievably good for just starting out. And so we're having him do another couple lit RPG books. One of them is called Pangea Online, Death and Axes. The other one is called The Wayward Bard. And they're both coming in the next couple months. So keep your eye out for those. And sooner than that, Dungeon Lord will be coming out probably in another week. Got the 3rd book of the Last Warrior of Unagaia series. I mean, really what you guys should do is find the Soundbooth Theater Live Facebook group and that's where I talk to fans. That's where fans talk to each other, and that's where you can see me actually narrate live. I have this show. have this show called Soundbooth Theater Live. That's where I actually got my company name, Soundbooth Theater. Um, but I get on there and I just stream myself reading things that people request. A lot of the time, authors want me to just read a little excerpt of their book. Sometimes it's just fans that want to hear me read something crazy. Like one time, I've read two different Chuck Tingle titles. I don't know if you know who Chuck Tingle is, but he's an absurdly inappropriate writer, and it's hilarious. What I'm trying. Oh, Butt Raptor Space Invasion. No, Space Raptor Butt Invasion.
Either way,
I can't
those
remember.
invasions are really
Right. So that was the last thing I read from him, and it was so painful and cringeworthy. So you'll be able to see some really crazy shit that I narrate. And I do it generally every week, maybe every 2 weeks. I try and do it as much as I can. Sometimes I actually have my other narrators do it as well. They recently did Justin Thomas James and Lori Catherine Winkle, the narrator of The Witch's Concern. They just did a Soundbooth Theater Live where they were kind of working out some character voices for Pangea Online, Death and Axes. So yeah, I'm trying to make audiobooks a bit more fun, and I'm trying to engage people in the same way that, like I said before, people like it when authors are accessible and when they can interact with their content creators. And so I'm trying to bring that to audiobooks as well, so that, people can see how we do things and people can meet us and, like, realize that we're how much of a part of the process we are actually for creating the audiobooks.
Yeah, you guys play a big part because so much goes into it. Many of you guys actually read the book. It's a lot of prep work. It's not just, you putting it up on your iPad or your computer or whatever and you're reading. There are so many things that go into it to make it. And it's a collaboration. And that's what I think I enjoy most about audiobooks is it's that you take those authors' words and you perform them. It's not really reading, it's a performance. And
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. And so with that being said, we will make sure that we give you an opportunity to tell people how to find you online, how to find Sound Booth everywhere. But I always have to do some type of little game because I'm really competitive and I like to have fun with my guests on the show too. So I'm just telling
Cool.
you, I forgot to prep you for this, but I like to play this game, and usually it's utter shenanigans. But when you come back next time, we'll play that. But this one is heads up, and it's very similar to Taboo or the $25,000 pyramid. So I will give you clues, and you have to guess what the answer is. It's that simple. Are you
Okay.
competitive?
Sometimes I'm competitive.
Sometimes. Well, I picked this out for you because you said you are into nonfiction, and guess what? This has nothing to do with nonfiction. Nothing.
Oh,
So
okay.
the category is called favorite fictional characters. So hopefully
Okay.
I know enough of them to be able to give you the right answer, the right clue. Okay? I think we have 30 seconds to get as many as possible. Are you ready?
Yes,
You
as
sound
ready as I could be.
nervous. Don't be nervous. Okay. Here we go. Can you hear the music?
Yes.
Oh, this is the person that's the mascot for Big Mac, the French fries. He's got red hair. He's a clown.
Oh, Ronald McDonald.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Come on to the next one. Oh. Okay. The opposite of clean.
Dirty.
Okay. And if you have, he was a detective. His first name began with that word you just said. I'm pretty sure.
Dirty Harry.
Yes. Was he a detective? I hope so.
I think so.
Okay. Oh, this is the anchor man. What was the man's name on the anchor man? His name.
Oh no. No.
It's a color.
Ron.
Yes.
Ron Burgundy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Why did I hit pass? I was supposed to hit correct. Come on.
Oh no.
I have no idea
Sorry.
who that person is. Oh, it's this guy in yeah, I'm not gonna get this.
Aw, we only got three.
Well,
It's all right.
you have to do it one
Three's
more
pretty good.
You got,
You want to do one more?
yeah, just one more because
Okay, one more.
just because. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I don't know who Rachel Green is. I feel like I should.
I don't either. I
Hmm.
don't know.
Okay, okay. Here let's try it again. Tap to pick another. No, we want to play again. Okay, fictional characters. Not sure why I picked that one, but yeah. All right. Oh, I just
Oh, Rachel Green is from
is that
Friends.
Friends? That was her
Yeah,
last
that's
name.
Jennifer. That's Jennifer Aniston's character. Yeah.
See, I didn't even know. I figured that out after you said it. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I Wikipedia'd that. I cheated.
You cheater. Okay,
Hey, we weren't on the clock. It's fine.
I'm gonna give you a choice. You can pick adult supervision or totally 80s.
Oh man, both of those sound like I'd be terrible. Let's do the 80s.
Okay. Now it really depends on if I can give you the clues. It's not really you, it's me. This is when
Okay.
that works. It's not you, it's me. Okay, here we go. You're probably not gonna get this, but it's something that girls wear in their hair. It's not a rubber band. It's not, and they use this.
Scrunchy.
Yes, you
Okay.
go. Oh, I pity the fool. He played in this show.
Mr. T.
It was, but what was the show called that used to come?
The A-Team.
Yes. Oh, this is the song Jenny's phone number. In that song, Jenny, I got your number off the bathroom wall. Oh, I know you know it.
No, I don't know it. I don't know this one.
I'm gonna pass.
Let's go.
This was the main chick in Star Wars. She had the little
Princess Leia.
Yes. What the heck? Oh, these were tennis shoes, and you used to squish this thing in the front, and they used to kind of inflate.
Pumps. Nike
Yeah.
pumps.
Yeah, I'll give you that one. Oh, this is the movie with Bruce Willis.
Die Hard.
Yes, I'm gonna give you that one.
Okay, was it Reebok pumps? I don't remember who did the pumps.
It was called.
Was it Jordans?
It was just called Pump Sneakers. So I just
Pump Sneakers. Okay.
The other one was 8675309. 86.
Oh.
Come on.
I think I think I've heard it before, but
you know what? I forgot.
that's one of those.
31.
Yeah, well, I mean that, but you know the oldies stations exist. You know these songs bleed through our culture.
You just said that the oldies station. That
Yeah.
You insulted me because.
Hey, the '90s stuff is on the oldie stations now.
Oh my gosh, you just totally made me feel like I should whip out my cane. That's okay. No love lost, Jeff. No love lost. It's all good. It's all good. Well, Jeff, I want to give you an opportunity to promote yourself, shout yourself out, tell our listeners how they can find you and follow you and professionally stalk you all across the internet.
So you can professionally stalk me on Facebook mainly right now. The Soundbooth Theater Live Facebook group. There you can get on the polls. You can vote for what I'm going to be reading next on my live show. You can get on the polls and practice other things if you really want to. Just make sure to record it, put it on a video, post it here. As long as you're in the group, you can post it. It's fine. So that's where I hang out mainly. The RPG Gamelit Society Facebook group is another place that I'm always at. And if you really want to investigate this new genre, it's actually there's like weird copyright disputes around the genre name Lit RPG now because this one author named Alaron Kong got a trademark on it, which I mean, there's already tons and tons of authors using the Lit RPG genre name on their books, and there were already tons of other authors who wrote in the genre before he came along, but he still trademarked it. And so basically the rest of the community is like, you know what, let's move on from him. Let's change the name of the genre. And it's kind of making things a little bit confusing right now. Yeah. But RPG Game Lit Society is where you should go to hang out. That's where all the cool kids are. That's where all I mean, like Aileron Kong has kicked out a lot of the of the best authors in the genre from his Facebook group. So they all had to congregate somewhere, and this is a much more free, more fun group where you can be yourself more and not worry about getting banned for basically no reason. So go there. A lot of great people there to hang out with. And eventually I'll have my website up, soundbooththeater.com. So keep an eye out for that when that's ready, because that's where I'm going to be featuring a lot of my videos and stuff. Also go to youtube.com/soundbooththeater live, and you'll find a bunch of our videos there.
It sounds good. So everybody, I hope that you make sure you go by and follow Jeff. Jeff also has a voiceover or narrator page on Facebook. I found it. So be sure you go by and check that out. Give it a like, and pick up some of his books on Audible. If you like I said, he's narrated books in pretty much every genre. So pick something up. Maybe you'll pick up Morningwood, and we'll talk about it.
Maybe you'll get some Morningwood.
Maybe you'll get some Morningwood.
And remember, this is how you spell my name: Jeff, Jeff, Hayes, Hays. So search for that. No E. I mean, there's an E in Jeff. Don't get me wrong, but not in Hayes.
Not in Hayes, everybody. But we want to thank Jeff so much for joining us this week.
Thank you for having me. It's been a blast.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of The Audio Flow. Everyone, be sure that you are following us on Facebook at The Audio Flow, as well as Instagram at The Audio Flow, and Twitter at _audio_flow. For this episode and all other episodes of The Audio Flow, you can find us on our website at www.theaudioflow.online. It is also available on iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and available for download on iTunes and Google Play. And we are on YouTube, but you don't get pictures of me nor Jeff. So I don't know if you want to go there. Thanks to my producer, Danielle, at Firefly Productions, and to my assistant, Rebecca. Until next time, everybody, have an awesome week.
Today's episode is brought to you by Audible. Try Audible's membership free for 30 days and receive a free download. You can even check out one of Jeff's books that we talked about on today's show with a free Audible trial. Visit www.audibletrial.com/theaudioflow. Until next time, have a great week.